Welcome back to Elevation Perspective. My name is Mark. Today we're predicting the top 15 MLB free agents, what team they're going to sign with, and what kind of contracts they're going to get. Coming in at free agent number 15, I have Kikuchi, really solid lefty starting pitcher. He shared last year with the Astros and the Blue Jays. He, of course, was acquired at the deadline by the Astros. Turned some heads there. A lot of people kind of thought, really, that package of going back for 2 months of Kikuchi, but it turned out a pretty solid deal for the Astros. He pitched well for them. Of course, he did not see any playoff time because the Astros were knocked out in those quick 2 games. They pitched Framber and Hunter Brown, so never appeared. But with all that being said, this is a really solid lefty starting pitcher, probably a 3 or a 4 starter, but I think he's reliable enough that you feel okay about him starting a playoff game if you were to sign him now. I thought about this long and hard. There's a lot of open starting pitching spots in this market. I'm actually going to go with the Los Angeles Dodgers, a team that just won the World Series that have a plethora of starting pitching coming back off the injured list, but I feel like this is a guy that you can bring him in here. My projected salary, my projected contract, I should say, is a 3-year, $45 million deal for Kikuchi. I think you bring him in there. He stabilizes that 3 or 4 spot in your rotation. He's appeared in 32 games the last 3 seasons, so he's pretty durable. You know what you're going to get, probably like a 4-ish ERA, maybe high 3s, low 4s. And if he's there, if he's consistent like that with that Dodgers offense, he's going to win a lot of games for you. So number 15, I have Kikuchi going to Los Angeles Dodgers on a 3-year, $45 million contract. At number 14, I have Jack Flaherty. Speaking of the Dodgers, of course, Jack Flaherty was acquired by the Dodgers at the trade deadline. This is a pitcher who had some pretty big moments for them in this playoff run. Of course, he also had some duds like the one against the Mets and the one against the Yankees, but he also had good starts against them as well. So very wishy-washy pitcher. I have a hard time kind of properly analyzing what Jack Flaherty is. He started off the year very, very strong with Detroit. Then he kind of hit a little bit of a snag, and then there was kind of reported that he has medical issues with his back. The Yankees might have nixed the deal at the trade deadline as well. That was kind of like loosely reported. So it's kind of hard to assess what Jack Flaherty is at this point. He's only 30 years old, so that probably does merit him a 3 or a 4-year contract. I kind of foresee a team overpaying. In my opinion here, I see the Chicago Cubs. I think they're going to be in the market for some big-time names, for the big aces, for the Corbin Burns, for the Max Frieds, for the Blake Snells of the world, but probably going to come up short in that market. I see them kind of having to overpay for more of a middle-tier option like Jack Flaherty here. So I have the Cubs taking Jack Flaherty in on a 4-year, $60 million deal. My number 13 free agent is going to be Sean Manaea, starting pitcher for the New York Mets. Manaea had a phenomenal 2024 season. It was really a tale of 2 seasons, though. In the beginning, first couple of months, he was not really that sharp, but right around June, he changed his arm angle to kind of mimic Chris Sale, and the production was absolutely phenomenal. He pitched like an ace for the Mets down the stretch. He was a legitimate Game 1 starting pitcher for this team, and for that reason, I kind of feel like the Mets can't let him go. Mets are also losing the likes of Quintana, possibly Severino. I feel like they have to keep this guy around to just stable that rotation. He seems like a real nice clubhouse presence, too. I feel like the guys really liked him from all different media and interactions I saw. I feel like the Mets are going to get this done. I think David Stearns really likes this player as well. I think Manaea goes back to the Mets on a 3-year, $60 million deal. My number 12 free agent is going to be Shane Bieber. This is a pitcher here that's very tough to analyze, very tough to break down. Of course, Shane Bieber was a frontline starting pitcher for the Cleveland Guardians for about 4 years before he had some different kind of injuries until 2024 came around, when he only made 2 starts before blowing out his elbow. So Shane Bieber's not projected back until probably mid-2025. So you look at these situations that we've had in the past with pillow contracts and Tommy John. A little bit different here because he's not missing the entire year, but I was thinking about a team with flexibility, maybe a team that's not totally going for it this year, can kind of have some eye on the future. I thought the Boston Red Sox. I think the Red Sox are a team that have a decent core in place, but they have a really strong farm system. So you're probably looking at 2025 as a possible year, but you're probably looking more toward 2026 and beyond for this Red Sox team. So I think if you go Shane Bieber here, say you give him a 2-year deal, $15 million per, so 2-year, $30 million deal with a player option for a 3rd year. If he's not pitching great, he's a little bit of insurance to fall back on, a 1-year, $15 million deal. That shouldn't really kill the Red Sox. I doubt this pitcher is ever terrible. It just feels like if he's healthy or not is the real equation here. So I have Shane Bieber going to the Boston Red Sox. We'll say a 2-year deal worth $30 million with a player option. My number 11 free agent is going to be left-handed reliever Tanner Scott. Tanner Scott is coming off 2 phenomenal years, partially with the Marlins and the Padres last year, fully with the Marlins the year before that. 2 back-to-back years with sub-2 ERAs, great strikeout numbers. The only flaw in Tanner Scott's game is he has a lot of walks, a walk issue, but it doesn't usually kill you when you're as filthy as he is in the back end of a bullpen. So Tanner Scott, I see getting a big-time contract here, and I see it with the New York Yankees. I think the Yankees were a team that are rumored to be on Tanner Scott at the trade deadline. He, of course, wound up going to the Padres, but the Yankees need some help in that back end. They are losing Clay Holmes and Tommy Kahnle. Of course, they could bring those guys back, but right now, looking at the team, they really only have Luke Weaver as a high leverage option in the back end of that game, and Luke Weaver was absolutely phenomenal for them. They might want to put him back into kind of like a multi-inning role and just give Tanner Scott the 9th inning, or Tanner Scott can set him up. They have a lot of possibilities there, lots of flexibility. I do have Tanner Scott going to the New York Yankees. I'm going to say a 4-year deal worth $52 million. My number 10 free agent is going to be first baseman Christian Walker, and spoiler alert, I have him going to the Yankees as well. I feel like first base is a position the Yankees have needed to improve and to solidify for years now. It's been Anthony Rizzo lately. He, of course, is not the player he used to be. They declined his option. He's going to hit free agency here. Christian Walker is nails. He's a really solid player, really good defender, which is really important for this New York Yankees team that's just been getting absolutely killed and ridiculed in the media right now because of how sloppy their play is, both defensively, base running. They just do not really do a lot of aspects of the baseball game correct. Bringing Christian Walker here just to solidify that first base position. He's probably going to hit you 30 home runs. Gold Glove caliber first baseman. He is 34 years old, so he's getting up there in age, but I think 2 years, $40 million for Christian Walker to the New York Yankees makes so much sense, and that's what I'm going with. My number 9 free agent is going to be Teoscar Hernandez. This is a player that bet on himself last year, did not get that multi-year deal in free agency he was looking for, wound up signing that 1-year big money deal with the Dodgers. It could not have gone better for him, honestly. He had 33 home runs, drove in a bunch of runs, scored a bunch of runs, won the World Series for crying out loud. Absolutely great deal for Teoscar Hernandez. But I feel like now going back into the market here at 32 years old, probably looking at a 3-year deal. I was trying to see what kind of team would go like all in for him per se. I think the Houston Astros make a ton of sense for this player. I feel like they need righty pop. They're probably losing Alex Bregman, I think at least. We'll get to that in a little bit. But probably losing Bregman. You have Kyle Tucker, you have Jordan Alvarez, both big lefties. Altuve, of course, is still there. But this team could really use a big-time righty. The Crawford box is just out there in left field. I think it just makes so much sense to bring in Teoscar Hernandez. Probably hits 40 home runs in that ballpark, for being completely honest. He can kind of like bounce off left field. It's so shallow they could probably play it pretty well. I know he's a very poor defender, but he could probably do fine out there. Maybe him and Jordan bounce off like DH in left field. I think that's fine. You can kind of hide one of them every game, and that makes total sense. I have the Houston Astros sign Teoscar Hernandez, 3-year deal, $70 million. My number 8 free agent is the player we just previously mentioned. It's going to be Alex Bregman. This is a player that I've always had a hard time properly analyzing. He had that one really great year in the juice ball era. He hit like 38 home runs. Besides that, he's just a kind of steady player. Every year he hits his 260. He walks a lot, really good eye at the plate, plays a good third base, but he hits like 25 home runs. It's 260, and that's fine. But you have to assume that power is probably going down leaving Houston. Like I said previously, how it probably will play up for Teoscar. You take this player out of that situation, and he's probably going to hurt his numbers. So I think you're probably looking more like a 250, 20-homer guy who plays good third base, who probably will age well due to his like plate discipline and on-base skills. But even so, 250, 20, is that really worth superstar money that you know him and Boris are looking for? I don't think so. After going through the whole landscape of the league, I think the Tigers make so much sense. Of course, they have the A.J. Hinch connection. He loves this player. The Tigers had a phenomenal August and September to catapult themselves into the AL wild card. They knocked out the Astros. This is a team that looks like they're on the rise. I don't think they're that really good. I don't want to like be a total hater, but kind of the AL Central. The American League was really weird last year. I don't know how good this Tigers team is, but I feel like you bring in Alex Bregman and really solidify the 2 or the 3 spot in that lineup. You can kind of help out guys like Riley Green, Parker Meadows, Spencer Torkelson, amongst others, and I think it just makes a lot of sense. So for that reason, I'm going to have the Tigers go out there and sign Alex Bregman to a 6-year, $120 million contract. Our number 7 free agent is going to be Max Fried, starting pitcher previously for the Atlanta Braves. It was always really telling as a Mets fan, as a baseball fan, to see the Braves never locking up Max Fried. The Braves always lock up their guys. Whether it was a Fried decision or a Braves decision, it was kind of always strange. With that being said, Fried's had a lot of different elbow and shoulder and arm problems throughout his career, but he's a very solid pitcher. When he's healthy, he's probably a 2-starter, really, really solid, a guy you want to pitch in the playoffs for you. So I was kind of bouncing around teams, kind of thinking he's not a big like swing and miss guy. He's more of a soft contact ground ball pitcher. I thought Baltimore Orioles. I thought it made a lot of sense here. I think they're probably losing Corbin Burns. Well, so we'll get there in a little bit. But I think you slide this guy on Max Fried right in the top of your rotation in front of Grayson Rodriguez and some of those young kids they have. I think it makes a lot of sense. This is a team that is still on the rise. They had that terrible second half, but the Orioles are still looked at in a very nice light. I have the Orioles signing Max Fried to a 5-year, $110 million contract. My number 6 free agent here is going to be Anthony Santander, coming off a great year, 40-plus home runs for the switch hitter. Not a great defender. He's really kind of a one-dimensional player, but he does that dimension, that power really well. And power plays. I think every team's out there looking for power. I think it'll make a lot of sense for a lot of teams. But after a long time of thinking this through, I went with the Kansas City Royals. I know it's kind of far-fetched, kind of out there, but the Royals have shown a willingness to spend in the past. Just this last offseason, they signed Seth Lugo, Michael Wacha. They really enhanced their team, and they were at the deadline. They went out and they bought Lucas Erceg and some other nice pieces to help put this team into the playoffs. I just think it makes a lot of sense for them to bring in a Santander. You can put this player in your 3 or your 4 spot with Vinny Pasquantino, Sal Perez, driving in Bobby Witt left and right. You probably just pencil him in there for like a 240 average with 30 home runs, and that plays. That's very solid. You can have him DH, play some right field. I think it makes a lot of sense. So I have the Royals signing Anthony Santander for 4 years, $88 million. My number 5 free agent is Willy Adames. This is a player who I have a hard time kind of properly, fully buying into. I think it's always scary for me when I look at their Savant page and I see that high chase rate, that high K rate, and I think about, do I want to give this guy a big-time contract, multi-year deal? He's a shortstop, so he's probably not playing the whole entire time of that contract at short. You're probably going to have to move him off to third or second at some point. There's a lot of red flags for me in the Willy Adames profile, but he's going to be very highly sought after. I think I've already seen some reports saying possibly the Mets want to move him off of short and put him at third or second. I know the Dodgers are already linked to this player, but for me, I think the Atlanta Braves make a lot of sense here. They, of course, been running out Orlando Arcia, who's been playing very poorly for them at the shortstop position. They've not really had a great answer since Dansby left. And I think this is a player that makes a lot of sense for them. He's probably their 6th or their 7th hitter because when they're healthy, that lineup is absolutely crazy. So I think it makes a lot of sense there. You put him at shortstop, you solidify that position, really strong defense. Like I said, maybe you got to move him off to third, but they have Austin Riley. So maybe I don't know how exactly it'll work in the future, but for the first 2 or 3 years of that contract, you're probably getting an elite defensive shortstop there. I just think his profile is so unpredictable that if next year he hit 35 home runs, I wouldn't be surprised, or if he hit 17 home runs, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a player that I've always been a little bit scared of with those high K rates. But with that being said, Willy Adames is a very solid player. I have him going to the Braves on a 5-year deal worth $100 million. My number 4 free agent is Pete Alonso, and Pete is a very polarizing player. I'm a New York Mets fan, so let's get that out of the way right out of the gate. I've definitely had my fair share of moments where I'm like, I'm done with Pete Alonso. We can't do this anymore with this player. He had an absolutely great career. He's done so many great things for our organization, but it's time to move on. And then he hits big home runs like he did in the playoffs, like he did with Devin Williams to extend their season. And you think maybe we should just keep Pete around. It's a very tough situation, especially when you think about all of those first basemen that have gotten those big contracts into their 30s that have aged just terribly. Just off the top of my head, you think Miguel Cabrera, you think Chris Davis, Prince Fielder, Mark Teixeira, and you see all of that. You see so many instances of this player model, this power hitting first baseman, just aging terribly. He's already declining. We're seeing it year in and year out. Only hit 34 home runs this year when he's kind of used to 40 and up. He's playing some of the worst first base defense I've ever seen in my life. So with all that being said, it's really hard to be like, you know what, let's give this guy a big contract and bring him back. But I think nostalgia is going to play out here. I think it's going to be really hard for Steve Cohen to see this homegrown talent leave the New York Mets organization. He is still beloved by fans. I think it's more like 70-30 now, or it used to be like 90-10, but I still think he holds a really nice place in a lot of fans' heart. He's done great things for this organization, and if he comes back, he is going to break pretty much all the offensive records. So with all that being said, I think the Mets do keep Pete Alonso around. I think it's going to be a 6-year deal worth $150 million. It kind of hurts me a little bit to say that out loud, but it's not my money, and Pete's been a really good Met. Hopefully, he doesn't totally bottom out. Hopefully, he's always still productive, even if it becomes like a 230, 25, 30 home run hitter where he's still helping you in some capacity toward the back end of that contract. We'll take that, but I think the Mets are going to keep Pete Alonso around. My number 3 free agent is starting pitcher Blake Snell. This is a player, just like so many other players on this list, where it's really hard to properly identify what he is. There's so much uncertainty, so much volatility with him, but I think a big reason why he was so shaky last year was the whole Boris spring training fiasco. That should be behind him now. I'm sure they're going to be very conscious this offseason to get him into a spring training, get him properly worked out before the year starts. I think the Yankees make so much sense here. This is a team that I know have been linked to Blake Snell in the past. I watched their whole playoff run, of course, eventually losing to the Dodgers in the World Series. I always felt like they were missing a big arm there behind Garrett Cole. I know they have Carlos Rodon, I know they have Clark Schmidt and Luis Gil, but none of those guys, I don't think, really impose fear into an opponent. If you have Cole and Snell lined up as your 1 and 2, that is legit. That is really tough to get through for any offense, and I feel like it just makes so much sense for this Yankees team. I kind of went with the route of them sharpening up their team. That's why I went with Tanner Scott. That's why I went with Christian Walker, and now Blake Snell. I felt like they just weren't sharp. And like I said, this isn't news, this isn't rocket science, not breaking news for anyone. It was clear to anyone watching the Yankees last year, they had so many fundamental flaws, and I think that's going to be addressed this year by Cashman, by the brass and the New York Yankees. And I just feel like it just makes so much sense. I have Blake Snell going to the New York Yankees on a 4-year, $108 million contract. My number 2 free agent is going to be Corbin Burnes. This is a starting pitcher who has solidified himself as a true ace. This is a guy who takes the ball every 5th day, makes his 32 starts, goes deep into games, gives his team a chance to win every 5th day, and he's really tremendous in that regard. There are some kind of red flags there in his profile. You can see his K rate's been going down every year. His chase rate is going down as well, but still a really strong ERA. Like I said, he still eats innings. He limits hard contact. I think he's looking at a really big contract here. I think the Boston Red Sox make so much sense for Corbin Burnes. This is a team that have not had that number 1 starting pitcher in a very long time, that ace, that bulldog guy. I think Corbin Burnes just fits this team so well. They have starting pitching options right now. They have Brian Bayo, Cutter Crawford, Tanner Houck, but they're more like 3, 4 rotational piece guys. They're not aces. They're not 2 starters. And that way, you bring in Corbin Burnes, everyone drops down a spot. There's so much less pressure on those young kids to perform. And I just think it makes so much sense. Corbin Burnes comes in there, comes into Fenway Park, makes his 32 starts. He pitches to his low 3s ERA, wins his 15 games. This is the ace the Red Sox need. It makes so much sense in my head. He, of course, has the American League East experience, pitching for the Orioles last year. This is a done deal in my head. The Red Sox are going to go out there, sign Corbin Burnes, 7 years, $210 million. And our number 1 free agent, the moment we've all been waiting for, it's going to be Juan Soto, of course, 26 years old, generational talent. It's honestly insane that he's been on 3 teams before free agency for a player of his stature. Like, that shouldn't happen. Of course, there were outstanding circumstances that happened where the Nationals offered him the crazy deal. He said no, so they just decided we have to trade him and get something for him. Then the Padres were kind of looked at as we can't keep him around, so we have to trade him and get something for him. And then he had this phenomenal contract here with the Yankees, and now he's in free agency. He's already talked to the media. He said all 30 teams have a chance to sign me. Of course, he's going to say that. He's very well media trained with Scott Boras, but where does Juan Soto go? I know right now there's a lot of talk about Mets versus Yankees. Maybe the Phillies are involved. Maybe the Dodgers are involved. Hopefully that never happens. Hopefully the league would stop that if the Dodgers were to get involved. But in my head, I think it's Mets or Yankees. I really do. I have the New York Mets signing Juan Soto. Call me a homer if you must, but I think it just makes too much sense. This is a player. How could Steve Cohen let this player go? He's 26 years old. This is a franchise player. This is a player that's already accomplished so much in this game at such a young age, of course, has the World Series ring, has playoff accomplishments, has tremendous offensive accomplishments throughout the regular season. I just can't see a world. I know he won't get outbid. I know Steve Cohen will not get outbid. Of course, Juan Soto could choose to stick around. Maybe he gets a nice offer from the Yankees and he can leave some money on the table just to go back. That's definitely a possibility. We don't know Juan. All things that we've kind of seen to this point, or all things we've kind of heard to this point, he's going to take the most money. And I think that's going to be Steve Cohen. I think he offers him the most money. It's going to be a hilarious contract. I'm thinking 14 years. He's 26 now. I think it's going to be 14 years paying him till he's 40 years old. $602 million. That way, you hit 2 numbers there. You pay him until he's 40. Also, you get above 600. I know he wants to get above 700, that Shohei contract, but of course, Shohei was deferred money. It was a whole messy, weird contract. I don't think Juan Soto is taking deferred money. I think he wants all of his money right now, and he's entitled to it. Juan Soto is the best player in this free agent class, one of the best players in this sport, probably a top 2 or 3 hitter in the game today. He's tremendous. I have the New York Mets signing Juan Soto. And that is going to do it for our top 15 MLB free agent predictions. This is a very tough exercise. I put a lot of thought into this, trying to get as many educated guesses as I could here. But at the end of the day, I'm probably happy with getting 4 of the 15 right, and that's probably a win in itself. But with that being said, hopefully everyone enjoyed, and thank you so much for watching.